Hi, and welcome to the Inside Scoop. They're so highly engaged, and they will bring those extra layers into the character as well. And I'm sure that that is also why you are great at what you do. And I've seen that you like to bring some humor and comedy into the party, and that is also one of the things that highly sensitive people is it's a quality of us that we do like to use humor whenever we can. And I think that's amazing that you do that in your job as well.
Yeah, I think it's a very fortunate thing to be able to do, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
in listening to you talk about it, it made me wonder if, when I was growing up, the message I got from my parents is you're too much, you're too dramatic. You don't feel that. I mean, my mother actually said, you don't feel that way. And I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling this way. This is real. It's not hyperbole. I actually have this feeling. And
Yeah.
it made me wonder if the messaging we got as kids, right, helps tame us so that we can function in the world a little better, but then also then becomes those messages become blocks later when we're trying to work and we're trying to develop our skills as artists.
Yeah, and I can imagine that you, like me, felt different and misunderstood and not normal because of those expressions that were made. Not, it's not that they intend these expressions to harm you or to be bad, but it's just because they don't understand us. And that can be very hard on a child or any individual. And that can make us feel, most artists I've spoken to, they all felt misunderstood. And then I think, how is that possible? In an industry where 85% of the people is highly sensitive, why is this not something that is just openly known and discussed and used as a benefit because it has such amazing gifts? So, what would you see as your biggest gift and talent and skill from being highly sensitive that you get to use in your acting jobs, for example?
I think it's the ability to empathize with other people. You know, um, to hear a story and then be emotionally present with that person as they're relating that story to the degree where I feel like I'm actually there with them. I think that's probably the biggest gift.
Yeah, I think that that is for a lot of artists the number one thing where they get to shine and really embody a character. Because if you can feel what someone else is feeling, which we can, because our mirror neurons are stronger activated than with other people. So, and a mirror neuron, if you see someone drink, your brain is actually doing the same, which makes us take our glass and drink. So ever since I've known this, you really get to see this, and then you see, ah, shit, I'm copying their behavior because they're drinking. If someone yawns, I'm lost.
Yeah.
I keep on yawning all the time. Then, but it's all those little things that your brain, yeah, really takes it in on a deep level. And being able to do that just makes you be that person while you're playing them. And I think that's amazing if you can do that and bring that into a show. That's just such high level of, I mean, commitment is not the word, but high level of presence in your role, in your persona. So have you noticed that sometimes you stay stuck in a character, or is that really easy for you to disconnect from that?
I think it depends on what the character is and what the story is. I A long time ago I was playing a role in a Tennessee Williams play, and because it was a play, so you go through a rehearsal process, then you go through weeks of performance. that character stuck around a while, and there was a lot of trauma in the story. Of course, like it's Tennessee Williams, um, but then other characters, like mostly my more recent work has really just been, a day on set on a TV show. So you prepare, you spend your hours preparing, and then you show up and you live in it, and then you go home, and it's this abrupt cutting of the cord where you leave the character on set or in the car or maybe in the living room afterwards. I'm actually looking forward to the next larger role where I get to actually live in that person and defend that person's reality for a longer period of time.
Yeah, I can imagine that that has a huge impact on your personal life as well. Because if I look, for example, I don't know if I can imagine in the US, you also have Temptation Island or something like that. And I used to have a lot of trust issues because, I grew up with a lot of things that went wrong in my family regarding those topics. So in the past, if a show like Temptation Island, where, seducing and cheating and all those things came up, I mean, my boyfriend would suffer. I mean, the entire week after watching 1 hour of that stuff, my brain would be completely absorbed with everything that I had seen, and that would, I would take it into my reality, and that I would become part of that scene. And that made it really hard for me. So I stopped watching those shows, which makes it a lot easier for me, but also was a sign that I had something to work on. So I did that work. I can watch those things now if I would want, but I've also chosen not to do that. I've chosen to fill my time and energy with things that bring me joy and not, you know, that sort of
No,
stuff.
I do think it's so important to curate what we're pulling into our psyche because there's so much available, right? There's so much available that we could watch, that we could listen to, that we could read. Um, Definitely, my partner, he'll ask me, "Are you okay?" I'll have finished a book or a movie that has a huge emotional impact, and it'll stay with me for several hours, sometimes days after. And I'm like, "No, no, no, I'm fine. I just finished the book," and he'll go, "Okay, I know what's going on." But yeah, that I don't know, that psychic reverberation or whatever it is, from the piece of art that you've just consumed. So several years ago, I went to Peru on a yoga retreat, and when I came back, I felt so reset, and I realized, okay, I can't consume the news in the same way that I used to before because it depleted me. My concern, I mean, like right now, it's just there's always so much pain in the world. And one of the things that I'm really struggling with right now is how do we acknowledge the pain? How do we feel the pain? Recognize what's going on for others and maybe even in our own lives. In our family, we've suffered some big losses recently, and yet move forward with also the joy. I mean, we just had the spring equinox. The days are getting longer. I live in Southern California. It's gorgeous right now. The flowers are blooming. Um, how do we hold the dichotomy of those two things in our heads and our hearts at the same time, um, in a healthy way, acknowledging the pain, acknowledging the grief or the mourning, but also recognizing the love that's present every day and all of the amazing gifts. So I really, when I got home from Peru, I just put a huge moratorium on what I was consuming, and I was very careful. I delved into a lot of beautiful podcasts and philosophies and self-help and amazing novels I love reading. And I had so much more energy to face the day than I used to have. And it was a real market difference. It was it was kind of amazing to me how different my energy was based on what I was consuming. So I think you're right. I think being careful with what we take in. It's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, for example, I rarely watch the news.
Mm.
I mean, it's interesting because here in Europe, there's a lot of things going on, and
Yeah, it's
I
really
just,
devastating.
yeah, but I do try to focus on the things where I have an impact. And you can always, you can go to places and help people in so many different ways. But I think that if we all use our skills and our talents the best way we can, and that works for us as well, I think that's probably the best thing you can do to keep elevating the energy of the world. So if I start watching those things and my energy goes down, I'm not serving anyone with that. So I do try to, stay in touch with my own light as much as I can. Just human, so it does fall, it falls out every once in a while. But yeah, I just try to focus on that and being the light that I can be and want to be, and bringing as much joy in my life as possible. And then, by lifting my energy and the spirit in and around me, I am I always see it as a magnet, and it's going out and it's attracting more of the same, so it's getting bigger without me having to do anything specifically for it. So I like things to go easy and comfortably. So yeah, if we can do it that way, what better can we do than just focus on our own light energy and bliss? I think that's a big one. um what I thought that was interesting when we had a little chat earlier, you were saying that you only got into this profession later on in life. And that also came with benefits, but also with some concerns. So can you share me a little bit what happened, what made you decide this later in life, and what's going on with that?
Yeah. So I um I always acted, since I was a little kid, elementary school, junior high, high school, majored in college. Um, but I also have this really deep love of story and language and literature. So I double majored in English and theater, and I had this idea, okay, I know I'm going to teach English and I know I'm going to act, and I just had no idea how it would fall out. I didn't know what the order would be or how that was going to happen. And I realized when I was 21, 22, graduating college, I didn't care about business. I didn't care about money. Um, I didn't want to pursue commercials, or Hollywood wasn't interesting to me. So I decided, okay, teaching is really the best way to start right now, because I know that if I go into teaching, it's like you were saying in terms of the light and what is worthwhile. I knew that every day I showed up to teach, I would be giving back somehow. And I couldn't see how pursuing acting at the time would fill my soul in the same way. Um, I loved it. If you had told me at that time I would stop acting for 8 years, I would have laughed at you. I would have said that there's no way. Um, but that's what happened because I had to learn how to teach and then develop those skills and get those programs up and running. And then the irony was there was no theater program at the high school. It was a public high school I was working at. And my principal said, "Hey, I'm going to open up the department and I'd like you to apply for the job." So I thought I was going to go teach English, and I was teaching English as a second language to students who were non fluent in English initially. And all of a sudden now I'm going to be leading the theater department and creating an entire department that hadn't existed for 6 years. And so that was a really wonderful adventure. And I was teaching students how to build sets and sew costumes. And we scrounged old sewing machines from the hallway that had been like from the home ec class. And um, as that got built up, I had time again. And so it was kind of my extracurricular assignment. I was like, okay, well, I'll allow myself to do 2 shows a year outside of my teaching. So I was kind of teaching, all day long and then going to rehearsal at night for local productions. And after a while, I felt really fulfilled in the teaching. And I realized I had this huge question of, well, what would it be like if I started acting professionally? How how would that unfold? How could that happen? So I saved up for a year because I knew I'd need a nest egg. I got a job at a community college teaching because I realized, okay, I know that I don't want to just quit my beautiful full-time job, which is really stable, and just kind of jump into nothing. So I took a year and I took classes. I'd only had theater experience. I knew nothing really about the camera. I went to UC Irvine, and at the time, they only had one television class. So it was a great class. I learned a lot, but it's not enough, right? I
Yeah.
mean, what is it like the talent code that Malcolm Gladwell talks about, your 10,000 hours of really excellent practice at whatever skill you're trying to assert. So I just started reading books like crazy, like what would an acting career look like, taking classes, audition classes, voiceover classes, gaining as much information as I could for that year. And then I launched my acting career in 2007. And it was kind of an incredible year. I picked up a agent the second month. I started booking commercials. I thought, I'm 39 years old. No one's going to want to look at me. I'm not young. I'm not thin. I like all of the self-sabotaging thoughts that come when you're putting yourself up in front of other
Yeah.
people for judgment or apparent judgment. I don't look at it that much that way anymore, but I still struggle with that in terms of, red carpet events or um, anyway, but but it was working. Like I was getting jobs, I was actually making money. It was kind of this incredible thing. And so on one hand, I wasn't 20, so I didn't have, 20 years to kind of build my career up, but I also had a career. I loved my life. There was a lot of stability. I had a home. Um, and I can't even imagine coming to Hollywood as a 22-year-old, leaving your family, how difficult that is, and how much I admire artists who do that. Um, to make that sacrifice for their work, it seems incredible to me. I was very fortunate. I already live in Southern California. I was actually born in Los Angeles. Um, grew up in the South Bay, so it's familiar to me. I wasn't ever in the industry, but the world is familiar to me. So I felt like I had a lot of advantages starting late, but there still is the conception or the maybe the limiting beliefs that I'm working with on am I worthy of this? Can I get where I want to go? Because realistically, I have maybe 25 more years. I looked at Betty White as a real role model. 99 years old and she's still working. Anthony Hopkins, late
Yeah.
80s. And I heard an interview with him about how he's very fortunate he doesn't have Alzheimer's or dementia in his family, and his memory still works really beautifully. And I'm just like, fingers crossed, please let me have that longevity so that I can develop my skills to the extent that I'm hoping, because now what I believe is that teaching and art, education and art, those are our saving graces as for humanity. I just think that if we can somehow communicate with compassion to each other, that somehow we can heal a lot of what's going on in the world right now in terms of how bifurcated people are, how separated people are. And I think, in the last couple of years over the pandemic, what have people turned to except to Netflix stories, Amazon Prime, all of the different media outlets where people can get a little bit of refuge from what's going on in the day to day, but also maybe inspiring stories about other people's lives. There have been a really amazing number of breakthrough productions where, gender and race have been transformed. And we're seeing people being able to speak about their own experiences in new ways where we haven't in the last decade. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think that it's like the glass ceiling got shattered, and we are allowed, thanks to a bunch of artists who and athletes as well during the Olympics, who came out for taking care of their mental health as well. Because I think that it's still such a difficult topic for some people, and there's still a lot of shame going on around it. So in that light, I think it's really interesting because you were saying, that you also have still sometimes those limiting beliefs and, the self-sabotaging self-talk. What are the things that concern you most when it comes to your own journey? What is that little voice telling you, for example?
Well, I'm absolutely, it has to do with body image and weight. And am I, it sounds so stupid, am I the right size for this role? And I think there's been a lot of progress in terms of what can a lawyer look like on television? What can a detective look like on television? What can somebody who's a love interest look like in film and television? But, there's 50 years of experience watching TV and all the messages from all the media that I've swallowed from, a very being a very little kid to today. So it does feel sometimes like it's a job. It's almost like a job where to take care of my mental health, I have to be really conscious about um, feeding myself positive messages to counteract the negative messages that are just ubiquitous in the world. Um, our brains are hardwired to read negativity to keep us safe. And I was reading somewhere that, a negative experience will wire into our neural net with one experience, but it takes seven experiences of the opposite to rewire that pathway. It was such a fascinating idea to me, right? So then, if I'm having these negative thoughts, I really have to work hard to supplant them with something positive. So that's been the pathway. And I also realized at this point in my life that all of the coping mechanisms that I had when I was a kid that kept me safe or kept me on track or kept me getting good grades in school, they're not really helpful anymore, and they're holding me back. So, you were talking about mental health, and I didn't realize it, but last year I was so burned out in teaching because we were teaching online, and the students that I'm working with sometimes don't even have access to computers, or they don't have a room where they could have class privately. So they're sharing a room with a brother or sister, or they have to take care of other brothers and sisters in their household who are also taking class at the same time. And just the emotional weight of what my students had to deal with, on top of the fact that people didn't want to turn on cameras, or people couldn't turn on cameras because they didn't actually have the technological capability. So you're teaching to this kind of, bank of black rectangles. And I think teachers go into teaching in a very similar reason for actors going into acting. There's this sense of community. There's this sense of relationship and communication, and that was cut off. And I hadn't realized how desperate I had felt, um, until I was talking to another teacher, and I was talking about how difficult it was to just sit at the computer and grade papers. Like I got to the point where I almost couldn't make myself do it, and I didn't know what was wrong. And I was thinking that I was lazy, or I was just being a bad teacher, or something, I just wasn't working hard enough, was the message I was telling myself. And she looked at me and she said, "No, I know that you're great. I know the value that you've brought to our school. You're burned out." And I just stopped in my tracks and I said, "Are you kidding? I Are you sure?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Yes, these are all the signs of burnout." And I realized that from a very young age, my mantra was, "I can do it. I can get it done. Like, throw it at me. I can handle it. Is it a big trauma? No problem. I can deal with it." And that grind mind is is killing me. So I can't persevere any longer. And I loved what you were saying, Kathy, about being in the world with a sense of ease, allowing my joy and my light to help light up other people, which I know is true. Um, there's a turning now in my work to connecting back to that, so that I can preserve my energy and my work, so that I can keep going longer instead of burning out or grinding myself down, because it doesn't work. It's not going to serve me. And if it doesn't serve me, it's not going to serve anybody else. I can't help my students. I can't show up to set um, fully prepared and calm and excited to meet the character. Um, so yeah, it's been a really interesting journey through confronting mental health over the last few years, and I hadn't realized how bad it had gotten or how hard it was. I hadn't
Yeah,
allowed myself to admit it.
it sneaks in, and then behind the scenes, it gets bigger and bigger. Met leren hoe ik de juiste audio-apps voor je kan kiezen. Welke app wil je gebruiken? I don't know, but I think Siri thinks that she needs to share something as well. I have no idea why she came up. My sound is off, so I have no idea, but okay.
She's spying on us.
Spying on us. Yeah. Okay, but circling back, I think it's really beautiful that you're sharing this, and it's certainly, I think, a big issue that a lot of us have struggled these past few years, or that we can recognize part of it. Um, what was your number one go-to thing or routine or habit that helped you overcome feeling burned out?
um, Meditation and breath work. But then what really ended up helping me break through the procrastination was tapping, or emotional freedom technique. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, yeah. It's incredible, just being able to tap the meridians and then talk through what's happening. Um, I would work on one area of my life, and then what I would find is that the procrastination would melt away in a totally different area, because I was taking the time during the pandemic, which is still going on, but we're not as locked down as we
No.
were, to focus on my writing projects. Um, And I had such a hard time working. I had such a hard time showing up to the work. So the emotional freedom technique, the tapping, really helped me melt the procrastination, the fear of approaching the work, and then also walking, just getting outside. We're so lucky. We live in a neighborhood where we can walk.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, that was the same thing when I struggled into my burnout 5, 6 years ago. The doctor told me, she said, Kati, you're not going to throw yourself on the sofa. You are going to go outside for a walk. Doesn't have to be long. Build it up, go for 20 minutes, start with 10 or 15 minutes. And then eventually I was walking 3 times a day, 20 minutes, or one time 45 minutes, or but with my dogs. And I started jogging a little bit, and then I started working out. And like you said earlier, I was filling my brain with very positive and strong messages from podcasts, videos, all that sort of things, workshops. So I was like, I was eating it up. I was really consuming it like wherever I could. I was filling my energy, my life, my thoughts, my everything with positive thinking. And even when I went for a run, I'm not someone who loves running. I don't enjoy it. So I noticed that little voice was telling me, oh, this is so boring and it's still so far and shit, I still have to do so much. And I just got started and I only went for like 25 or 30 minutes. It's not even 5 kilometers. So it's super short distance, but it was very present and it was bringing my energy down. And then I noticed that the stance I was taking had such a big impact on how I was perceiving the act of running. So at one point, I started claiming the inner stance of I am a runner. I'm a runner. This is what I do. I'm a runner. And it just started, when I was struggling, it just started going a lot easier for me because instead of complaining and bringing my own energy down, I was, creating an attitude of this is who I am. This is just what I do. I breathe this stuff. And so I started enjoying, is still a big word, but really resonating and especially loving the feeling that I had after I went for a run. I love that sensation of, tapping myself on the shoulder, like, oh, good girl, you did it again. Wow. I mean, I can really do that. After a workout, I'm so bloody proud of myself. I can really be like, wow, you're so amazing. You did it again. That's the only reason I do my workouts, but it works. But
No, but I can resonate with that so much because what I really found out was that there's some people who say, oh, if you don't show up, charge yourself $1, take someone else out to dinner, like punitive things that if you don't show up for yourself. And I realized, oh, that does not work for me. I need to add a girl. I need to like, yeah, you did something great. So I started texting friends. So whenever I would write, and then, my partner, we made a rule in the household. Okay, no TV until 5 o'clock. Like you can't sit on the couch because it had become a huge problem.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so we had to put that into practice at home, and but yeah, that the patting yourself on the shoulder. I just think, I mean, it works. It works for me anyway. Uh, just to be able to share with somebody. Yeah, I showed up and I wrote today. Um, I'm doing that right now with a friend. I realized my productivity had really just died over the last, I don't know, 5 months. And I thought, well, if I really want to get this film written, um, I have to write it. And if I don't write it, it will never be written. And if I don't write it, I can never produce it. So it's this really interesting chain effect, right? So
Yes.
I pinged her and I said, "Hey, I'm having problems again. Can I text you when I write?" And she's like, "Yeah, absolutely." So that's gotten me back on track, and the last couple weeks have been a lot better.
And that's such an easy thing to do. And you know what? I've learned that people really like to help others because it makes us feel special when we can help someone. So it's so easy. We don't like to do that, but it's so easy to ask someone to help us because it makes them feel good about themselves too. So
Yeah.
it's win-win, you know? It's amazing how that works. So wow, thank you for sharing this story and all your openness and the experience that you lived through and how you dealt with that. I think it's so inspiring. And I do hope that our audience also got to take some golden nuggets away from your story and what we shared on those topics so that they can start integrating it in their own life as well, because that is what this show is about, so that we can serve as an inspiration for others so that they can actually take what resonates with them and integrate it in their own lives so that their light can shine brighter as well. I think that's the most beautiful thing we can do. Just be ourselves, shine your light, and see if you can touch others with that. And we don't have to touch others. It's just beautiful if it happens. It's just a bonus.
Yeah,
So
but
I think,
I think we
yeah,
will. Like, I think it's inevitable if we move into the world, you know. I mean, even, you go buy a cup of coffee and just smiling at someone, makes a huge difference.
I love
Um,
that. When I see someone smile on the street, I go instantly pure happiness. So I
yeah,
always try to remember that because I tend to be a little bit too shy. And then when I see someone on the street, my heart, the little girl inside of me says, "Hi, how are you doing?" But then I'm like, just quiet down and what will they think? So I try to do like, you know, so that they can see that I'm being friendly. But actually, I've learned that the bigger my smile is and the bigger my enthusiasm is, it's contagious, and
yeah,
it's spreading it. And when you can double a smile, how beautiful is that? It's just that's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute blast having you here. I've had a lot of fun talking to you.
Kathy, it was an
And
honor. Thank you so much for inviting me.
oh, let's stay in touch and we'll talk soon again. Thank you so much, Stephanie, and good luck with everything that you get to do now and later on.
Thank you so much.
Bye.